Christmas morning that changed everything. It was 5:58 in the morning on Christmas Eve when my 7-year-old daughter Grace crept into my room, her hair tangled from sleep, her cheeks wet with tears, and her small hands trembling around a folded piece of paper. I was barely awake, my brain still sluggish, my mouth tasting like regret, but the moment I saw her face, something inside me snapped into focus. She held the paper toward me with both hands, like it was simultaneously fragile and dangerous. I took it carefully, smoothed it open, and read the words that made my stomach drop in slow, terrible motion. "We're off to Hawaii. Please move out by the time we're back." That was it. No Merry Christmas, no love, not even a signature. Just a cold, blunt dismissal left on a kitchen table where a child could find it first. I stared at those words longer than I should have, half-hopping I was still dreaming, half-hopping the universe would take pity on me and rewind the last 30 seconds. It didn't. Grace whispered that she'd found it on the table and thought it was from Grandma and Grandpa. I told her immediately, too fast and too sharply, that it wasn't about her. I didn't know that for certain yet, but I was absolutely not going to let my 7-year-old carry the weight of adult cruelty on Christmas morning before the sun had even properly risen. I told her to stay in the room and I walked out into the hallway. The house was not just quiet, it was emptied. No voices, no clinking dishes, no footsteps, no television murmuring in the background. I checked the living room first, then the entryway, then the window that faced the driveway. The suitcases that had been lined up by the door the previous evening were gone. My father's ridiculous vacation hat that he wore like it was a personality statement was gone. The car was gone. Every last trace of them had vanished, as if they had carefully, deliberately erased themselves from the morning. I called my mother, straight to voicemail. I called my father, voicemail. I called again because denial, as it turns out, is completely free. Voicemail again. I went back to Grace, who was standing in the exact same spot I had left her, not having moved a single inch, looking at me with the kind of fragile hope that physically hurts to witness. When I told her they weren't there right now, her face crumpled. She pressed her lips together tightly, fighting back a louder cry, and my chest clenched so hard I almost couldn't breathe. I told her I was going to call Aunt Bella, kept my voice gentle, and stepped into the hallway so Grace wouldn't have to absorb everything that was about to happen. Bella answered like she had been awake for hours, which knowing her was a personal offense in itself. When I asked where our parents were, there was a pause, just long enough to tell me she was deciding whether to pretend she didn't know. Then she sighed with the particular boredom of someone who finds other people's pain mildly inconvenient. "Oh," she said, "you found the note." My stomach turned completely over. I said she knew about this, and Bella confirmed it without a hint of shame. She told me, in the tone of someone explaining an obvious fact to a slow student, that they had all decided together, that I was 31 years old and still living with our parents, that it was embarrassing, that this trip was adults only, and that my being gone while they were away would actually make moving out less awkward and less dramatic for everyone involved. Less dramatic. She genuinely used those words. I reminded her, keeping my voice tight and controlled, that I had moved into that house specifically to help her, to help pay for her university education, to co-sign her loan, to cover what the loan didn't reach every single month. Bella laughed once, the kind of laugh that dismisses something as cute and irrelevant. Mom's voice joined the call through the speakerphone, bright and decisive, as if she were announcing a change in dinner plans rather than the fact that she had abandoned her daughter and grandchild on Christmas Eve. She told me that Bella's best friend Brooke had wanted to come on the trip and there hadn't been enough rooms, so they had given Brooke the room that I had already paid for. She said it warmly, like this was reasonable, like this made sense. Brooke, my mother explained, had been Bella's best friend since freshman year. She was basically family. Those two words hit me somewhere deep and very specific, basically family. I repeated them slowly, then asked, as calmly as I could manage, whether that meant Brooke was family but Grace and I were not. Mom told me not to say it like that. I asked what I was supposed to do and where we were supposed to go. Bella said brightly that I would figure it out because I was an adult. Mom made a dismissive sound and said I had had a cushy setup long enough. Bella was warming up now, finding her rhythm, saying that it was just weird that I still lived there, that it was embarrassing that I was making them look, And that is when my voice finally cracked, just slightly, just once. I asked her if she meant making them look like they had a single mother in the house who had helped pay for school. Mom snapped my name. Bella snapped the word drama. And in that exact moment, something inside me did not break. It clicked. It settled into something quiet and completely clear. I stopped arguing. I stopped explaining. I said very softly, "Okay, noted." Then I ended the call. Grace was sitting on the edge of my bed when I walked back in, her face still wet, her hands tucked into her sleeves. She asked me, in a voice barely above a whisper, whether we were in trouble, whether Grandma didn't want her there, whether it was about her. I crossed the room in 2 steps and pulled her into my arms and held her as tightly as I could without scaring her. I told her none of it was her fault. I told her we were not in trouble. I told her we were going to have Christmas. And then I picked up my phone, because feelings were step 1 and logistics were step 2, and I have always been very good at logistics. I opened the Hawaii booking confirmation in my email. I found the charge on my banking app. I called the number on the back of my card and explained, calmly and factually, that my name was on the reservation and I was not the one using it. I froze the card, opened a dispute, and removed my payment information from anything they could continue benefiting from without my knowledge. If my family wanted an adults-only vacation, they were going to pay for it like adults. Then I opened the university portal, the same account I had been quietly, dutifully funding every month, tuition and dorm fees and meal plan all bundled together, approximately $900 at a time pulling steadily from my account like a subscription I had stopped consciously noticing. I removed my card from the payment page. I turned off the automatic withdrawals. No announcement, no warning, just a few taps and a confirmation screen, and it was done. Then I called Lauren, one of the only friends I fully trust, and told her I needed a Christmas rescue without going into every detail. She asked first whether Grace and I were safe, and when I said yes, she told me immediately to bring Grace over because her daughter Emma was going to lose her mind with excitement. By mid-morning, Grace was sitting on Lauren's couch with a mug of hot chocolate, wearing a Santa hat that Emma had shoved onto her head with the confidence of someone claiming ownership of a best friend. Lauren's living room smelled like cinnamon and normalcy. No passive-aggressive sighing. No guilt. No note on a table making a 7-year-old feel unwanted. Grace laughed that afternoon. A real laugh, the full-body kind. The kind that makes your throat tighten because you hadn't realized until that exact moment how desperately you needed to hear it. We ate too much food. We watched movies. We made jokes about Santa probably needing therapy. Grace fell asleep on the couch with crumbs on her cheeks and a stuffed animal tucked under her arm, and for one entire day I felt something that was genuinely close to relief. After Christmas, I moved quickly, but not recklessly. I searched rental listings with a single filter set to available immediately, and there are far more of those than people realize when you are not trying to impress anyone. I found a modest 2-bedroom apartment that had been sitting empty for several weeks. I showed up with everything a landlord wants to see: steady income, clean paperwork, no complications, and I applied the same day I viewed it. Within a few days, I had the keys. By the end of that week, Grace and I were already sleeping somewhere new. Then I started collecting what was actually mine. When I had moved into my parents' house, they had quickly developed opinions about the existing furniture. The couch was tired. The chair was bad for my father's back. The coffee table did not reflect the household properly, so I had paid $2,000 for a couch they chose. I had paid nearly a month's rent for a chair. I had bought a heavy coffee table that no one needed but everyone admired, all of it on my card, all of it because I was supposedly being helped. They used those pieces every single day. They took pride in them. They made jokes about how I should feel grateful to sit on something so nice. When I moved out, I took every piece with me. The movers did not ask questions. I did not explain. Grace watched the last item come through our new front door and looked around our living room with an expression I had never seen on her face before, something like wonder, something like ownership. She asked if it was really ours. I said yes. She smiled like she believed it completely. My mother called the day they returned from Hawaii. I almost did not answer, not because I was afraid of her, but because I genuinely did not have the energy to sit through my mother performing the role of victim in a situation entirely of her own making. She did not bother with a greeting. She demanded to know what I had done to the living room. I told her hello. She said the couch was gone, the chair was gone, the table was gone, and asked if I had lost my mind. I told her I had simply left her house. She accused me of stealing their furniture and threatened to call the police. I told her to go ahead and offered to text her the receipts while she was on hold. She said I was unbelievable, then mentioned that they had noticed my card was removed from the Hawaii reservation and that they had paid for the trip themselves and did not need my charity. I told her that adults paying for their own vacation was a genuine growth moment and I was proud of them. She told me not to get smart, then she hung up. About an hour later, she called back, and this time her voice had shifted from angry to worried-angry, which is a different and more revealing sound entirely. She asked what I had done to Bella's university account. I asked what she meant. She said Bella's payment had not gone through, that there was a hold on the account, and that Bella could not register for the next term until it was resolved. I told her very steadily that my card was no longer on the portal. My mother went silent for a full beat, the kind of silence that happens when someone's brain is trying to reboot around an unexpected obstacle. Then she said I could not punish my sister just because I was upset with them. I told her I was not punishing Bella. I was simply not paying for her anymore. My mother said Bella was my sister, as if that phrase carried legal weight. I reminded her that Grace was my daughter and that she had left a move-out note where a 7-year-old could find it on Christmas morning. My mother told me not to change the subject. I told her this was the subject, and that when she ended the arrangement, the payments ended with it. Then came the part about the loan. The original disbursement had already gone through, but the next term required new paperwork, and that paperwork required a cosigner. My mother told me to sign it. I said no. There was silence. She said my name again, softer this time, as if a different tone might produce a different answer. I said no again, and I meant it the same way the second time. I told her that if Brooke was basically family, perhaps Brooke could help. My mother sputtered. I told her I had not written that joke. She had. Then I ended the call. Bella called minutes later and she was not calm. She demanded to know what I had done, called it sabotage, said it was bitterness dressed up as action. I let her go until she ran out of momentum, and then I told her I had not sabotaged anything. I told her the school did not distribute money automatically, that there was paperwork every term, and that someone had to sign for it. Bella's voice changed when she understood. She asked, with something that was no longer anger but was instead something closer to genuine fear, what she was supposed to do now. I told her to do exactly what she and our parents had told me to do. Be an adult. Figure it out. She said it was not fair. I told her that was interesting, because she had not mentioned fairness when she was calling me a leech in our parents' living room. She said she had not meant it. I told her she had, and that she had also been right about one thing, which was that I needed to be living independently. I told her I was now doing exactly that, which meant I was funding my life and Grace's life, not hers. She said I was ruining her future. I told her I was refusing to manage it for her, which was not the same thing. Then I said goodbye and hung up. They showed up at my door a few days later, all three of them, my mother and father and Bella. Standing in the hallway like a team that had rehearsed being reasonable during the car ride over. I did not open the door. I spoke through it. My mother's voice turned sweet, the particular sweetness that in my family has always been a warning sign, like sugar coating on something you should not swallow. My father said they just needed me to listen. Bella cut in and said it was not funny, which told me she still believed my decisions were some kind of performance meant to get a reaction. My mother said she really needed me to help my sister. My father added quietly that Bella could not get the loan without my co-signature, and then my mother, in a moment of painful honesty, admitted that their credit could not qualify and they could not cover it themselves. Bella told me to just sign it. My mother switched back to sweetness and said we all loved each other and that we were family. Bella, without fully meaning to, added that they had just wanted me to grow up. I stood on my side of the door with my hand on the lock, and I felt something inside me settle into a calm so complete it was almost foreign. I said no. My mother's voice tightened. I said no again. I told them they were not coming in. Bella said I could not do this to her. I told her I was not doing anything to her. I was simply no longer doing it for her. Her voice cracked slightly, and she said she would not be able to study. I told her she would figure it out, And yes, I meant it in exactly the tone they had used when they left a move-out note for my daughter to find. My mother said I was being cruel. I pointed out that cruel was leaving a note where a 7-year-old could find it on Christmas morning. My father tried one more time, quietly, calling me Jess, asking me please. I told him, as gently and as finally as I have ever said anything, that they no longer had access to my daughter. No contact with me, no contact with Grace. Bella made a sound like something was choking her and said I was ruining everything. I told her she had ruined her own plan when she decided I was disposable. My mother said I was being dramatic. I smiled at the door and told her I was being done. Then I opened it just wide enough to make it clear I was not afraid of any of them, simply no longer interested, and I pointed down the hallway. They left. The hallway went quiet. Not the empty, hollow quiet of that Christmas morning, but the other kind, the kind that belongs to you. I locked the door and walked back into our living room, where Grace was sitting at the table, coloring, humming softly to herself, completely unaware that anything had just ended at our front door. She looked up at me and smiled. I sat down beside her. To truly understand why I did not beg or plead or attempt to negotiate, you have to understand that my family did not become this way overnight. They had simply never been this explicit about it before. I was an only child until I was 11, and for those first years, I had no comparison point, no frame of reference to tell me whether what I was experiencing was normal or not. My parents were not warm. They were not the kind of people who sat on the floor and played games, who asked about your feelings, who made you feel like your presence in their home was a source of joy. But they fed me and took me to school and showed up in the basic functional ways, and I had nothing to compare that to. So I called it fine and I believed it. Then Bella arrived, and it was as if my parents had been completely replaced by different people who had apparently just discovered patience, delight, and discretionary income. Everything I had been told was impossible or inappropriate when I was growing up became possible and charming when Bella did it. The money that had never existed for my needs materialized reliably for her wants. My emotions were attitude. Her tantrums were big feelings. My mistakes were careless. Her messes were cute. I watched it unfold like a science experiment I had not consented to participate in, and I spent years finding explanations that would make it hurt less. They were older now and calmer. They had learned from raising me. They were in a better financial position. People change and grow. I told myself all of it because the alternative, which was that they simply loved her more, was not something I was prepared to sit with. My role was assigned early and clearly. I was the helper, the third adult, the built-in babysitter. I did diapers and bottles and watching your sister while I run errands and holding her while I cook and you're older, you understand. By the time I was a teenager, it was no longer can you help but you need to help, and it was stated as a fact rather than a request. When I was old enough to work, I contributed to the household in the serious way, not in the cute summer job spending money way, but in the you live here too way. Bella never contributed. Bella was the investment. Bella was the future. Bella was the one who needed things. I was expected to manage. I went to community college nearby because that was what my parents told me we could afford. No money for anything fancy, said gently as though gentleness made it generous. I lived at home and worked and kept my head down and built a decent profession and made decent money. I got married young, had Grace at 24, and then got divorced about 3 years ago in a split I will not turn into its own separate story, except to say that what came after surprised me. Life got genuinely good. I got my own apartment, small and quiet and completely mine, just me and Grace, no passive aggression, no guilt trips, no being reminded that my labor was owed to people who had decided they were doing me a favor by tolerating my presence. For the first time I could remember, I was not bracing for the next demand. Then my parents called with that particular tone, the reasonable tone, the we're just laying out the facts tone. Bella had been accepted to a prestigious university, a real one, an expensive one that required her to leave home and live on campus. My parents explained the tuition, described how hard it would be for Bella to balance work and school, said it would ruin her experience if she had to manage too much on her own. And then the question arrived, wrapped in guilt and presented as love. Could I help? I remember standing in my kitchen while Grace colored at the table, staring at the wall, feeling the old trained response kick in before I had even consciously decided anything. My mother told me I could move back in, that they would give me a big room, that they would help with Grace, that I would save so much on rent, and that I could use that money toward Bella's future. Bella's dream. Bella's everything. I did not want to go back. I want that stated plainly and permanently on the record. I did not want to give up my peace or my privacy or the quiet apartment where nobody demanded anything from me. But I had been trained for exactly this my entire life. I had been prepared to sacrifice, to excuse, to help, to step back. So I agreed. I moved in about a year and a half ago. I did what I had promised to do. Bella's university ran everything through a single student account, tuition and housing and meal plan all together, and I co-signed the private loan that covered part of it and paid the remaining balance directly every month through the university portal, my card on file, the charges going through reliably and quietly. Within just a few months, the story had been completely rewritten in my family's telling of it. I was no longer there because I had sacrificed my independence to fund Bella's education. I was there because I was 31 and still living with my parents, which was embarrassing and weird. I was the leech. I was the one being done a favor. My parents began treating the fact that they occasionally interacted with Grace in the same house as some kind of heroic charitable act, as if my daughter should be grateful they put up with her. Grace felt all of it, not in loud, obvious moments, but in the small, quiet ones, in the sighs, in the I'm busy, in the way my mother's smile never quite reached her eyes when Grace asked for attention. My daughter started getting quiet around them. The same quiet she had that morning with the note. And standing there on Christmas Eve watching her hands shake because she thought her grandparents had decided she was not worth keeping around, I realized something that shifted everything. This was no longer just about what had been done to me. This was about what was being done to my child, and I was absolutely not going to raise her to believe that love means begging to be included in the lives of people who treat you as an afterthought. About 2 months after all of this, my phone lit up with my mother's name one more time, and I answered it because something told me I should hear what this last chapter looked like. It was not an apology. It was not about Grace. It was not even about Bella's tuition. It was about the house. Years earlier, before I understood what helping my family would eventually cost me, I had co-signed their mortgage. They needed my signature again to refinance and avoid a significant payment increase. My mother called it just a signature, as if my name were a stamp with no weight attached to it. My father said it was nothing, the way people say nothing right up until the moment it becomes something they cannot handle alone. They told me the payments might become unmanageable. They said they might lose the house. And I will be honest, hearing that did something to me, not guilt exactly, and not satisfaction either, just this quiet and very specific irony. The same people who had left a move-out note, where a 7-year-old could find it on Christmas morning, were standing at the edge of losing their home and calling me to ask for help. I told them no. That was the last time I heard from them. I do not know exactly how their story ends. I do not know if they found someone else to absorb the weight they had spent years distributing onto me, or whether things unraveled the way things do, when a structure that was never really sound finally runs out of people willing to hold it up. What I know is what happens in my home now. Grace sleeps through the night. She does not follow me room to room with fear in her eyes. She does not ask if people want her around. She sits at our table in our living room surrounded by furniture that belongs to us, and she hums to herself while she colors, like the world finally makes sense, and like she is safe inside it, which she is.